This was a real mask-off moment for a lot of these people who claim to be defending those Enlightenment values that really they are the Western chauvinists that they've been accused of being for all these years. Right. As soon as this broke out, immediately it became the Muslim hordes need to be driven out of the West.
Well, when Bill Maher and Ben Affleck and Sam Harris went at it, and Bill Maher and Sam Harris kept insisting, no, we're not criticizing Muslims as people, we're only criticizing their ideas. And at the time, I bought that. It seemed like a reasonable argument. But in hindsight, whatever you think about the intellectual, rigor of Ben Affleck, he sniffed them out for who they were. They weren't just talking about ideas. They were saying that because they have bad ideas, the West has carte blanche to do with them what they want. That's obviously where they were coming from, as evidenced by Bill Maher. Right. The first words out of Bill Maher's mouth after, bombs rained down on northern Gaza were, you're really going to defend these people who are, anti-gay, anti-choice? Like, that's where they're coming from. They're saying because they don't share our values, it is okay to slaughter them en masse. I mean, that's his point.
Yeah, I love the newfound right-wing obsession with the cause of LGBT equality. It's so amazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
But this is a thing that I remember in 2005, 2006, when I first was writing about American politics and the Iraq War was going on. All of a sudden, there was this huge spate of news articles about the Iranian government's abuse of gay men. They hang them from cranes. They beat them in public. And then I saw these neocons like Bill Kristol and those types who were trying to get the United States to go back to Tehran and do to Iran what we had just done to Iraq. And they started using that as a cudgel. We're in bed with Saudi Arabia and Egyptian dictators in these Gulf state regions where people who are gay get the death penalty, and no one says a word about that because, of course, no one cares. This human rights concern is an absolute cudgel. It's we're going to go around the world now bombing any country that doesn't have enlightenment on LGBT issues. Like, let's get ready to have a war with half the world.
Right.
And, that is, of course, I do think maybe for people like Bill Maher, he does see the thing that way. But I've had this feud with Sam Harris for a full-on decade. He recently went on a show and said, I'm the single most unethical person on the planet or whatever. Because I saw this fraud going on for a long time. Here you have, and again, I think a lot of this is taboo to say, but so many times it's the hieroglyphic that deciphers everything. Sam Harris and Bill Maher are both two American Jewish men who grew up in American Jewish households that were taught the same things that we were taught, that we talked about at the beginning of the program. And just coincidentally, they both happen to have as part of their worldview that Muslims, the people we're taught since childhood to hate, to think is the enemy, are the enemy. And I ask, Jewish defenders of Israel a lot of times who come on my show, do you ever have this process of self-reflection where you realize that the exact thing that you've been inculcated from every direction to believe from infancy now happens to be the guiding worldview that you have as an adult? Do you ever wonder whether you're seeing this not through your own rational faculties, but because of the indoctrination and inculcation that you've been subjected to since birth? And it was always clear to me that Sam Harris was seeing the world as somebody who wanted people to believe that Muslims were inherently inferior, that their culture was barbaric and savage, that we had to be at war with them. And I think this is part of the thing that has been forgotten as well, is because of Trump, there's been this sort of space in this ethos on the American right that we don't like the CIA, we don't like the NSA, we don't like the Pentagon, we don't like what happened after 9/11 with the Iraq War. And there is a lot of people who kind of got convinced of that. But the minute Israel is the issue, right, all of that sentiment that was very strong after 9/11, that I have to say George W. Bush, to his credit, tried to keep suppressed, probably because I think of his father, that we're not at war with Islam, that would be the most insane thing to do. He, in that first week after 9/11, went to mosques and met with imams, to make that point in a way that I think was important and that he didn't have to do. That's one of the very few things I will give George Bush credit for. But there was a lot of those neocons trying to, at that point, disseminate this idea that this is a war of civilization.
Yes.
That the United States just happens to be at war with all of Israel's enemies. All of Israel's enemies are our enemies. We're all against the Arabs and the Muslims. That's the real war. And a lot of that lingers to this very day. A lot of immigration sentiment is about that. Even though I fully share and support people who have these immigration concerns, because there are very real and non-racist reasons to be very concerned about the flow of immigrants, as Democratic governors and mayors are now seeing when they arrive on their doorstep instead of people in Texas and Arizona. But that is a big part of it, is that kind of civilizational war that is very tribal, very primal, has been reawakened by all of this.
Please clap.